If their family members are watching this right now, what do you say to them? Look into the camera right now, and if they're watching, what do you say to them?
I'm sorry for their loss, and I hope that you can find it in your heart to forgive me. And I'm so sorry, and I never wanted this to happen.
In the serene, picturesque town of Jupiter, Florida, the rhythm of daily life was about to be upended in the most unimaginable way. The quiet coastal community was accustomed to peaceful evenings, with its sun-kissed shores and friendly residents. For Austin Harrouff, a 19-year-old sophomore at Florida State University, the night of August 15, 2016, started like any other.
How's it going, guys? Nothing in life worth having is easy. Remember that, guys. You remember that? You remember that?
Known for his easygoing demeanor, Austin was a typical college student, good-natured, sociable, and always looking to enjoy life. Yet behind this persona, something darker was brewing in Austin's mind. That evening, Austin casually told his family he was going to hang out with friends, but there was a strange tension in the air.
Young man beating up a woman across the street.
Okay, are they outside or in a house?
It's in a garage.
Okay, can you tell if he has any weapons?
I think he had a knife, but I'm not positive.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm about to perform Hound Dog by Elvis Esquire Presley. You know, the king. All right, thank you very much, and prepare to listen.
His words seemed off, as though he were hiding something. His mother, speaking about the hours before the incident, later recalled that Austin was acting oddly, even though nothing overtly alarming had happened. After a few hours with no word from him, his family grew concerned.
You called 911 later on that night, and you said that he was missing.
It was not like him to disappear without so much as a text. A simple, "I'm okay," was something they had come to expect. But on this night, that reassurance was missing. By the time the sun had set, the Harrouff family's worst nightmare was beginning to unfold.
Hello, bros. It's Austin Frosty, man, and today I want to talk about personal trainers and why you should be cautious when following a personal trainer. First off, a personal trainer doesn't have the same body as you. That's the first point, okay? Personal trainers are themselves, and they found out what worked for them. They went through the trial and error. They did their research. And a lot of them don't even look good, man. That's the funny part, man. You gotta listen to the personal trainer's advice. But you gotta find your way too, man. You gotta learn for yourself. You can't just hope and pray that someone is just gonna give you all the resources that you need, because it's just not gonna happen, man.
Austin Harrouff, a 19-year-old former Florida State University student, had been experiencing a downward spiral in his life. Once described as a gentle and well-behaved young man with good grades, Harrouff's behavior had become increasingly erratic in the weeks leading up to that fateful night.
I'm not a scientist, bro. But I know how stuff works. I mean, you can call me God if you want to. The God of fitness.
His parents, Mina and Wade Harrouff, had grown concerned about his mental state and were in the process of arranging a mental health evaluation for him.
Well, how's life?
It's tough on us, Austin. We're not used to this.
Am I gonna be okay?
Yeah, you're gonna be okay.
How's
Are they
Jupiter?
taking care? Are you taking your medicines?
Yeah, I'm taking my medicine.
You need to get a Bible, Austin.
I know. I asked for one.
Do you have one?
Are you getting me a therapist or anything?
Yes, I plan on it.
Little did they know, their son was on the brink of committing a heinous crime that would leave a community in shock and forever change the lives of those involved. At 9 p.m., as Austin's family began to worry about his whereabouts, an entirely different nightmare was taking place just down the street. John Stevens and his fiancée, Michelle Miskin, were preparing for bed. It was a typical Tuesday night for the couple, who lived in a modest, comfortable home in a quiet neighborhood. They had no reason to suspect that this peaceful evening would be their last. The night was warm, and the sound of crickets and rustling leaves filled the air. But that calm atmosphere was shattered when, at precisely 9 p.m., a neighbor out walking his dog made a disturbing discovery. As he strolled past the Stevens home, he glanced through the bushes and saw what he first thought was a bizarre and grotesque scene. A young man, hunched over a person on the ground, seemingly engaged in some sort of strange behavior. The more the neighbor looked, the more he realized with horror what was happening. Austin Harrouff, a figure he recognized from the neighborhood, was literally gnawing on the face of another human being, Michelle Miskin. The sight of it was so shocking that, for a moment, the neighbor froze in disbelief. Was he seeing this right? Was this a nightmare come to life? This was no random attack. This was something far darker. The neighbor instinctively began rushing toward the scene, his heart pounding in his chest. But as he moved closer, Austin suddenly looked up. His eyes were wide, glazed over in a vacant, almost primal manner. His expression lacked any sign of humanity, replaced instead by an eerie emptiness. There was no recognition, no sense of remorse, just an unfeeling stare. A chill ran down the neighbor's spine as he realized the danger he was in. Austin, now completely disconnected from any semblance of rationality, stood up slowly, his body tense and rigid. Without a word, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a knife. It gleamed menacingly in the dim light of the street lamp above them. "Stay back!" the neighbor shouted, trying to retreat, but it was too late. Austin moved with lightning speed, closing the distance between them. The knife came down in a swift, erratic motion. The neighbor instinctively raised his arms to protect himself, but it wasn't enough. He felt the sharp sting of the blade slice across his forearm. Blood poured from the wound, soaking his clothes, but he didn't stop. Every ounce of adrenaline in his body screamed at him to run, to escape before it was too late. "Help! Someone, please!" he yelled, his voice breaking. In his panic, the neighbor staggered backward, trying desperately to find safety. But Austin followed, his footsteps heavy and deliberate. Every time the neighbor thought he had gained distance, Austin would advance again, his eyes never leaving him. The neighbor managed to stumble backward to the corner of the street, where he collapsed into the arms of another neighbor, gasping for breath. He's eating her face," he managed to choke out. His words seemed to make no sense, yet the horror of what he had witnessed was undeniable. The brutal, senseless attack would haunt him for the rest of his life. The 911 call that followed was raw, panicked, and filled with confusion. The neighbor, his voice shaking, barely managed to explain the horror he had just witnessed.
Don't open that. Don't open that.
Fire rescue, what's your address?
Young man beating up a woman across the street.
Okay, are they outside or in a house?
It's in a garage.
Okay, can you tell if he has any weapons?
I think he had a knife, but I'm not positive.
Okay, can you tell if she's injured or he's injured?
Say again?
Are either of them injured? Can you tell from where you are?
Yes, there's a girl laying on the ground. He beat her up. I ran over there. I'm bleeding profusely here at the moment.
Okay.
I don't know what happened.
All right, can you tell if she's conscious or is she unconscious?
Say again?
Can you tell if she's conscious?
No, it does not appear so, no.
Okay, and what kind of injuries do you have?
I've been stabbed in the back.
With a knife? And where is he? Is he
I think
in
he's
the area
in the garage, right across the street from my house.
"There's a man attacking a woman," he cried, barely able to catch his breath. "I don't know him. He's stabbing me." His words were frantic. Each one rushed in an attempt to get help before it was too late.
What did the guy look like? Was he white, black, Hispanic?
He is white.
You know how old he is?
About 25 years old.
And what was he wearing?
Shorts and a t-shirt.
Do you know who he is?
I have no idea.
Does he live at that house, or?
No, he does not.
And you said you definitely saw a knife, and that's what he hit you with in the back?
No, I did not see it, but my wife's looking at my back, and it appears I got punctured.
Yes, Dad. In the neck, in the head, three puncture wounds.
Okay, we got units en route, okay?
Okay.
All right, just call us back if anything changes, all right?
All right, I'm bleeding pretty bad. So
Okay,
please
we got an ambulance and everybody en route. Just stay right there and stay calm, okay?
Okay, thanks.
All right.
The operator, trained to stay calm in chaotic situations, tried to reassure him, but the terror in the man's voice was impossible to ignore. "Stay with me, sir. I need you to tell me exactly what you saw." "Is the attacker still there?" the operator asked. There was a pause, a long, drawn-out silence, before the neighbor's trembling voice came through again. He's eating her face. Please, hurry, please." The operator's voice grew more urgent as they gathered as much information as possible, but there was little they could do from their end, other than dispatch officers and paramedics to the scene. As the minutes passed, the situation deteriorated further. The sounds of police sirens grew closer, but with each second that passed, the hope of saving Michelle faded. The community, which had once been a tranquil haven, was now grappling with the reality of a crime so violent and unthinkable that it felt like a scene straight out of a horror movie. In the home of John Stevens and Michelle Miskin, the scene was utterly horrific. The initial attack was brutal, but the extent of Michelle's injuries was more gruesome than anyone could have imagined. The marks left by Austin were savage. Her face, once a defining feature of her beauty, had been torn apart, torn open with unnatural force. John, who had tried to protect her, bore the brunt of the attack as well. His body was found not far from Michelle's, and the sheer violence of the assault left no room for survival. The first responders arrived at the scene to find a bloodbath. No attempt at understanding the brutality could have prepared them for the carnage they encountered. Michelle was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, but the injuries were too extensive. The doctors fought desperately to save her, but Michelle succumbed to her injuries hours later. John's death was confirmed almost immediately. Neighbors, friends, and even the police, still in shock, had difficulty processing the violent, random act that had claimed 2 lives. John and Michelle had been pillars of the community, generous, kind, and well-liked by all. They had no enemies. No one could fathom why they were chosen to be the victims of such a horrific crime. The investigation into the horrific murders of John Stevens and Michelle Miskin began immediately after the 911 call was made. What initially seemed like an ordinary case quickly spiraled into something far more sinister. When police arrived at the scene, they found John Stevens' body near the front door, brutally attacked with signs of extreme violence. Michelle Miskin's body was discovered in a nearby room, also showing similar signs of a savage assault. Both victims had been mauled beyond recognition, their injuries so severe that it was unclear at first how they had died. As investigators combed through the crime scene, the initial shock began to give way to more chilling questions. What had driven a young man, seemingly out of nowhere, to commit such a violent and senseless act? The answer came in pieces. Austin Harrouff, the 19-year-old suspect, was soon identified as the person responsible for the murders. His location was quickly traced, and he was found near the scene, incoherent and covered in blood, disoriented but seemingly unaware of the magnitude of his actions. When police tried to question Austin, they were met with bizarre responses. He appeared confused and out of touch with reality, with no recollection of the events leading to the deaths of his parents' friends. He had been acting strangely in the days leading up to the murders, withdrawn, erratic, and even reportedly hearing voices. Family members told authorities that Austin had been suffering from mental health issues, but no one could have predicted that it would escalate to such violence. As the investigation unfolded, it was revealed that Austin had been using a combination of drugs, including hallucinogens like flakka, a synthetic stimulant known to cause extreme aggression and delusions in those who take it. However, the defense team later argued that Austin's mental state was significantly compromised by his underlying mental illness, not just drug use. They suggested that he might have been in the midst of a psychotic episode triggered by the drugs, but with an underlying, undiagnosed mental disorder exacerbating the situation. The evidence, including Austin's erratic behavior and incoherent statements to police, suggested a level of mental disturbance that would later become a central element in his defense. Investigators also uncovered disturbing texts and social media posts in the days before the attack, where Austin had expressed feelings of paranoia and the belief that he was being controlled by dark forces. The chilling aspect of this investigation was how Austin seemed to have disconnected from reality entirely, and it raised more questions about his mental health history. Forensic experts confirmed the brutal nature of the crime, stating that the injuries inflicted on the victims were not just random acts of violence, but appeared to be motivated by a deep-seated rage. The mutilation of the bodies was unlike anything seen in typical violent crimes. Investigators were left wondering if Austin had planned this attack or if it was a moment of uncontrollable insanity. They would later have to reconcile Austin's actions with his psychological state, as the line between murder and mental illness became increasingly blurred. The case prompted a wave of local and national attention, as the details of the investigation and the young man's mental health struggles were revealed. For the community of Jupiter, the investigation's conclusion was both heartbreaking and unsettling. How could someone so young, with so much promise, spiral into such violence? The question would linger long after the investigation ended. As Austin was escorted to the police station, his erratic behavior only deepened the mystery. His mind appeared to be miles away, lost in some unknown fog. His family, shocked and heartbroken by what their son had done, began to come forward with more information. They explained that Austin had been battling mental health issues for years, although he had never shown signs of being violent. His mother, in particular, seemed to struggle with understanding what had happened. She explained that just days before the incident, Austin had been unusually withdrawn, but had seemed perfectly normal otherwise. He had no history of criminal behavior, no signs of violence in his past.
You called 911 later on that night, and you said that he was missing.
Well, I guess when he took off the second time, they called me. I don't know when they called me and said, "Is Austin there?" And I said, "No. What happened?" "Well, he took off again."
You mentioned on your 911 call that he's acting schizophrenic. Is there any history in your family of schizophrenia on your side of the family? Any sign of mental illness on your side of the family?
I mean, we always teased that my brother was,
But did he ever get treated?
No.
No medicine? What about your son? Did you ever treat him for any?
No.
No? Okay. Also in your 911 call, they asked you if he's on drugs, and you had mentioned that, yes, he has been on drugs, but you don't know if he's been on drugs lately. Do you know what kind of drugs he was on?
I mean, I know he did marijuana.
Okay. Did he do
and
an excessive amount, or was it just social, if you could even call it social? Or?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I mean,
Okay.
he hung out in his room.
Okay.
So
Dad said that about 2 months ago he also found him doing mushrooms. Do you know anything about that?
I don't know if anybody found him doing mushrooms.
Your son, how was he as a kid? I mean, he still is a kid, but was he always happy, joyous,
Yes.
good as far as you could tell? Never got into fights in school? Has he ever been suspended from school or anything? No, nothing. Okay.
Nothing. I mean, it's never really any anger issues. Maybe, Bud and I have our spats and stuff,
like
but
any
he
normal
wants to
kid.
protect me, you know.
Sure. Has he ever got physical with Dad, or?
Dad?
Yeah.
No.
But as the police dug deeper into Austin's psychological history, they discovered that he had been diagnosed with schizophrenia and had been struggling with his mental health for years. Was this an act of pure madness, or had Austin been suffering from something more sinister, an external influence or mental disturbance that led him to commit the unimaginable? As the court proceedings began, the defense team argued that Austin Harrouff was not mentally competent to stand trial, given his history of mental illness. His attorney's case was built on the idea that Austin's actions were driven by delusions. He had believed he was under some kind of supernatural influence. He had no recollection of the attack and was unaware of the damage he had caused. The prosecution, however, had a different view.
Well, family spoke very passionately in that courtroom today of many things. They said they still do not buy it, that Austin Harrouff was insane despite medical professional expert opinions. They just say the result of that night, that deadly night, was a result of Austin being a drug addict. But a judge made his decision today with support from both the state and defense teams that Austin Harrouff did meet that state criteria to be considered insane, so he will be bypassing prison and headed for treatment.
I hate you. I hate you with every part of my being.
You both said your son acted strangely for weeks leading up to the murders, and you even set up an appointment for him to be evaluated. You should have done your job better, quicker. You should not be purchasing him knives.
The state had an evaluation of Austin, and the state's own expert opined that he was insane at the time. So I think it does a disservice to those seeking mental health treatment, for those struggling with these issues. It is real. And it is powerful. The brain is a powerful organ, and that's what this was about.
And of course, we don't know just how much time he might spend in that mental health institution, but we do know that he would never be released or discharged without staff and medical professionals there deeming him to not be a danger to society, to the public. He would also have to go before a judge before any decisions would be made. Reporting live in Martin County, I'm Megan McRoberts, WPTV, News Channel 5.
They painted Austin as someone who had premeditated his actions. They pointed to his behavior before the crime and the gruesome nature of the attack as evidence of malice, not madness. The jury would ultimately be left to decide, was Austin a victim of his mental illness, or was he a cold-blooded killer? The verdict would send shockwaves through the community, and the case would forever be a reminder of the devastating consequences of untreated mental illness. In the wake of the murders, Jupiter was left in shock. The community, so accustomed to tranquility, was now shattered. Neighbors, friends, and family members tried to understand how something so violent and senseless could happen right under their noses. There were endless questions, but no clear answers. How could a young man, once so normal, turn into a killer? How could someone with such a promising future descend into madness? Mental health advocates began to speak out, urging people to be more aware of the signs of mental illness and the importance of seeking help before tragedy strikes. Austin's case was a tragic reminder of how untreated mental disorders could spiral out of control, leading to devastating consequences. For the victims' families, life would never be the same. The Stevens and Miskin families struggled to cope with their unimaginable losses. They would never again see their loved ones, and the haunting images of that night would stay with them forever. The case of Austin Harrouff remains a tragic reminder of the devastating consequences of untreated mental illness, particularly when it intersects with violence. In the months and years following the horrific attack, the community of Jupiter, Florida, would slowly rebuild, but the scars of that fateful night lingered in the hearts of those who lived through it. The Stevens and Miskin families, forever changed by their losses, would never forget the two innocent lives taken so brutally. Austin Harrouff's journey through the legal system was long and fraught with complexities. The question of whether he should be held fully accountable for his actions continued to spark intense debate. Was he a victim of his mental illness, or was he simply a young man who lost control? The court's decision to eventually commit him to a mental health facility rather than prison underscored the central theme of this case: the struggle between justice and compassion, between accountability and understanding. For some, the verdict seemed a necessary step in recognizing the depth of Austin's suffering. For others, it felt like a failure to acknowledge the severity of his actions. In the years since the crime, mental health awareness has gained prominence in public discourse, largely as a result of tragedies like this one. The tragic case of Austin Harrouff brought attention to the importance of early intervention, proper treatment, and stigmatization of mental illness. It highlighted the need for more resources and understanding for individuals facing severe mental health challenges before they spiral into irreversible harm. But no amount of mental health reform could ever undo the tragedy. The Stevens and Miskin families still mourn their loved ones, and the town of Jupiter, once known for its idyllic beaches and quiet streets, will always remember the unspeakable violence that occurred there. For Austin, his future remains uncertain. He may never fully understand what happened that night, but the lives lost can never be forgotten. In the end, this case serves as a chilling example of the fine line between the fragility of the human mind and the irreversible damage it can cause. It is a stark reminder that sometimes the most innocent among us, those who are loved and cherished, can fall victim to forces beyond their control. The journey of Austin Harrouff, the families of John Stevens and Michelle Miskin, and the community of Jupiter, Florida, will forever be intertwined in the tragic story of that fateful night. where innocence collided with madness in the most brutal of ways. If you found this case insightful and thought-provoking, please take a moment to like this video to show your support. Share it with friends and family who might be interested in the complexities of criminal cases like this one. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more in-depth analyses, real-life case breakdowns, and important stories that deserve to be heard. Your support helps us bring more important topics to light. Thank you for watching.